Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Hope you are enjoying your day. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain, where we have some interesting conversations, some engaging conversations, but all around some beneficial conversations about a wide range of topics and have discussions with amazing guest speakers. As you know, we've spoken about different things of whether why it's always important to ask for help when you need it. The lessons that we could all learn from content creation, and things such as placements, the ups and downs, things that we wish we could avoid as well. But today, we've got a very interesting episode. And the reason why I say it's a very interesting episode is I believe at the time of this episode being released, that episode that it sort of links with is not out yet. But it's to do with sort of like this entrepreneurial journey, and like I said, we have previously touched on episodes about being entrepreneurs and things like that. But also, we'll be talking today more specifically about a Brunel student who's a entrepreneur in their own right. But as I always tell you guys, I don't want to bore you with the introduction of them. I think it's best if you hear it from them and hear them discuss and talk about themselves. So I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker today and let them introduce themselves to you, our wonderful audience.
Yeah, thank you for the for the introduction. So yeah, my name is Dr. Akuha, and I'm from Nigeria. And specifically, I'm from the Middle Belt, like Benue. So shout out to any Benue guys out there. So yeah, and yeah. My academic background, basically, I had a hat-trick of degrees in Brunel, all in computer science, and that includes a PhD as well. And I have industrial experience in the robotics industry and also in the health industry. So currently, I'm also a co-founder in a health tech company called PsychoTec. So that's my brief introduction.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's always a pleasure to have a fellow Nigerian on the podcast with me as well. Now, we're going to get things started with our first official question, which is essentially about what inspired you to do a PhD. Now, I want to, before we dive into the question, I do want to say, as a master's student at the moment, what I'm going to do next has popped into my head from time to time, especially now as I go towards the end of my master's. And I know for some people, they are, thinking about of encouraging me to do a PhD. And I completely understand that a PhD, like a master's, is not just a simple thing you can just jump into. It's something that you have to be passionate about, something you need to be dedicated to, something you need to always, I guess, be. Oh, so it is sort of essentially like a job, it's something you have to be committed to. So that's why, this question is very important because we just want to know what inspired you to do a PhD.
So yeah, what inspired me to do a PhD? So basically, I wasn't thinking about the PhD if I'm being honest. But then, getting into the PhD was more or less like the topic itself. So I was doing my master's like yourself. And then in the process, I met the right supervisor and then I had the right topic. So in a way that made the decision for me to do a PhD much, much easier. So if you're kind of trying to get into a PhD and you're doing your master's undergrad, I would, suggest you go out there and talk to your supervisors, see who you gel with, because this is going to be a long haul, 4 or 5 years basically. And then you guys are going to try to concentrate on this topic. And if you guys don't have chemistry or, you guys lack certain kind of communication between yourselves, then it's going to be really difficult. So I would say me doing a PhD just happened. It wasn't random because my family, obviously, if you come from Nigeria, they try to push you to, have the highest qualifications, basically. So they pushed me to that level. But then I still had to sit back and be do I really want to do this? And then the last thing that pushed me to that, stage or that mindset was the topic itself. It was something I was passionate about. I was passionate about gaming in the past. And I'm still passionate about gaming, but that's just on the side. And then the supervisor was able to give me a topic that allowed me to kind of dive into that field. So yeah, that's
Oh, thank you. And it's great to have again. No, so you're not only a Nigerian, you're a passionate gamer as well, and I can definitely agree. See that I love gaming myself. I know my brother does as well. And yeah, it's honestly really great to have you here and to know, like I said, not only a fellow Nigerian but a fellow gamer as well. It's great. But yeah, now going on to the next question. It's very important for this one to first start off by explaining to our students that you and your team, you essentially were a part of you applied to be a part of, I believe it's the not the venture competition, sorry, the I think it's the venture competition. The Brunel Entrepreneur Hub run every year. So for any students who don't know, whether you're a Brunel student or you're not a Brunel student, Brunel yearly runs a competition with a certain amount of money. I believe it's usually £10,000 to £15,000 a year. Each year, sorry, that they essentially run this competition, and essentially it's to help students who have business ideas or startups that they want to essentially turn into a full-fledged business. And they offer them advice, they give them workshops. Currently, at this moment of recording, they've just finished theirs. There'll be another one coming in the next academic year. So if you are a Brunel student and you are interested, keep an eye out. Just check out Brunel Entrepreneur Hub. They've got an Instagram page, LinkedIn page where they put all the information. You can check it out there. But as I said, it's important to go back because I've got one of the winners of that award with me today. And I think it's very important to highlight that because obviously the next question is all about, what inspired you, or essentially why, sorry, did you decide to start PsychoTech? Because sort of as a uni student myself, and like we sort of mentioned before the recording, doing your masters or doing your degree, working as well. Sometimes it can be a bit hard to have a startup or to have a side hustle, for example. But I guess two questions is actually sort of this one. So the first one is essentially, what is Psychotech? What is it? What is it addressing? But also, why did you decide to start it? Why did you think that, looking out, you saw that there wasn't enough being done and that Psychotech needed to be essentially created to help address this problem?
Yeah. So I'll start with the first question. So what is Psychotech? So Psychotech essentially is like an online platform where you can diagnose depression and hopefully treat depression. That's what we're aiming for, basically. So what happens is we're trying to create a platform where different people with different backgrounds can go online, fill in a form, send in additional material, and quickly get the diagnostics, basically, based on, biomarkers. Because usually what happens now is, like, for instance, if you're a foreigner coming to the UK, there's a high chance, like, if you try to go to a therapist, they don't understand where you come from or your culture. So it's difficult for them to kind of like understand, the trauma you're facing or the kind of like mental illness you're facing, basically. And then also currently in the industry, there's like a one for all kind of a treatment that people use. So what we're trying to do is to break that stereotype and then try to, classify people based on their interests, basically, rather than based on where they come from. Because you could come to the UK and have other interests, or your interests could change. So if they say, oh, I come from Nigeria, so therefore this is what's troubling you, that could be different because my interest has evolved. So basically that's what we're trying to solve, and that's what Psychotech is about. And the second question, correct me if I'm wrong, was, what inspired us to kind of like start Psychotech? So obviously PhD is a very tough journey, and then in my office, obviously I don't want to mention names, but then it was difficult for everyone. And then most people didn't have the support, basically, because I think for us in our office, it was mainly first generation PhD students, basically. So in a sense, their family didn't understand what exactly the PhD was. And there was no one within the family they could kind of like talk to or, rely on and be like, oh, could you help me? How do I cope with this stress? How do I cope with that? So everyone was just on their own trying to figure it out, basically. So in that office, we tried to talk to each other, then share our differences from different cultures. And in a way, we kind of like, spoke about how if we tried to talk to our families about this, they wouldn't consider this as a problem. They just be like, oh man, you went to the UK just for 1 year, and then now you're sounding like, oh, you have mental illness and all that stuff. What's going on? That doesn't happen back home. What's going on with you? So from there, we obviously met the right people, the right co-founders. That's one thing as well. So I have people that are like one of the co-founders, Sahil Datta, and he's a doctor as well. He did his PhD in neuroscience. And also our CEO, which is Jill Humberg. She's a psychologist basically, and she has over 20 years of experience in the field. So talking about this and then finding ourselves in there, and we're engineers as well. We're like, why do we keep talking about this when we can do something about this? So from there, that conversation changed from, talking about differences and how, mental health is viewed from different sides of the world to let's do something about this and let's try to tackle this problem, basically. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I think it's been very important. One thing that you mentioned there is your team. I think that especially I was listening to someone has a podcast that I was listening to, and they sort of mentioned the same thing, that there is this tendency basically with online things and social media, and as they said LinkedIn can also be a huge source of this, where you hear the lone entrepreneur who tackled every issue that sort of came to them, and they did everything by themselves. Sorry, the podcast I should mention was called Imperial B, so that's Imperial BE, and they were looking at, and the person on there was a black entrepreneur, and the Imperial's podcast was all about black entrepreneurs and their journey and what advice they wish they had and lessons learned type thing. And they mentioned it there as well. The person was basically saying that there's this tendency that we think, oh, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, starting a business, we have to do everything ourselves. We can't have a team. We can't depend on a team. We have to be the ones who are, going out, learning all these things, doing all these things. We have to do everything ourselves. When actually, that's not how businesses, even, whether it's you're starting a new business or it's a small business or it's a big business, that's not how they're run. It's always about having you are, as an individual, have an area of expertise and you're a specialist in that area, but you'll work with others who have areas of expertise because they'll be able to support you if you don't know all the information there. So I think that's very important to note and to just highlight that, like you said, within your own team, you've all got people, you all have different expertise, you all specialize in different things, and that's essentially, what helps to make an efficient and a good team. But also, I think is really good that what you were talking about, about how using this experience when it comes to, especially when it comes to like whether it's therapy or ways to treat depression, that sometimes the information that can be given isn't always useful for the individual. So with that, we had so in our previous episode that we looked at, music and mental health, we had someone who was on there called Vanessa, and she has a documentary that we can include in the description. It was basically just talking about, I think it was, oh gosh, I don't remember the university, but it's in the video, but they're essentially just talking about their experience. And one of the students there was saying that she went to use their therapy services, or she went to speak to a mental health advisor. And she said one of the things she noticed was, so she's black, and the person she was speaking to wasn't black. So she was saying a lot of the things that she was mentioning about, how she was feeling, the cultural aspect that can sort of come with, certain expectations, the way that I guess also certain like we were sort of discussing here, certain mental health issues can be treated or addressed sometimes. The person just didn't understand, and the person was just giving generic advice, and that's not to say the person wasn't doing their job, but it's to say that when you're dealing with someone who may not necessarily be the same culture or from the same country as you, there's that level of getting to see that sometimes it's matching, like what we were saying here, matching up the right practitioner with the right patient, because by doing that you can ensure that person gets the best quality best health quality, and ensure that their essentially mental health or their health in general is looked after properly. So that's what I think is really important, like you were mentioning, that it's all about sort of connecting these individuals with the right people. And Psychotech sounds like a really amazing thing, and we can't wait to see what happens with it in the future. So we're now going to go on to our last official question of today's episode. And I guess we sort of touched a bit on the advice in the previous one, but I'm more than happy to have some more advice. And I'm going to go, if you can do 3, I have 3, it's always a magic number. People love things in 3s. So if we can get 3 pieces of advice, that'd be amazing. But what advice would you give to a student that's looking to start a business? Whether this is a student that, has previous business experience, whether that's because they've worked with other businesses or they started a business and it didn't work, or for someone who's just had this idea of starting a business for a very long time and they're now thinking, I've listened to this episode, I've heard how people can start businesses. What should I be looking for? What are some of the lessons that I need to make sure that I'm aware of when it goes to starting a business?
Yeah. So that's a good question, actually, because no one gave me an advice when I wanted to, get into Psychotech, basically. But now, obviously, I'm in a position where I could give like an advice. So I would say the number one thing is to find the right co-founders, basically, you know, and because that helps, that helps a lot. Like, we spoke earlier, like when you have people with different expertise, they get to see or look at the problem from a different point, like viewpoint, basically, and then give you like a different opinion, and then you guys could kind of like, tackle the problem, seeing things from a different point of view, because you could be stuck if you're just doing it by yourself, or you have people that are in the same field as you. And then, you have to kind of like outsource or find someone else or do additional research. But then when someone else comes from, different, field, or it's a specialist in the field you're trying to go into, basically. Let's say you're in tech and you're trying to solve a problem within the financial industry. It's good to kind of like be friends or have a co-founder that's a banker or has that experience in finance, basically, to kind of like give you the, viewpoint of what happens in that field. Then you can kind of like find a middle ground where you can merge and kind of like create a solution that helps both parties, basically. And before that, like the idea as well. Think about the idea you're trying to solve. Are you passionate about this? Like, because it's going to be very difficult, basically. Like so many companies, like they start and then they fail between like within 2 years, basically. So you have to think about what you're trying to do. If it's something you believe in and something you see clearly, like there's a gap here in this industry, there's a problem here in this industry, then you can just kind of like use that and then fuel yourself, like, give yourself more motivation, because every day you wake up and you see this problem, similar to PhD, you do more research, put yourself in more, and you kind of like try to solve this problem. But then if the problem isn't, basically you don't believe in it, like you're just doing it for the sake of like, I just want to start a company, then obviously after a while, it's going to get tough. And then you wouldn't have any reason to stick onto that, because you'll be like, okay, this is too tough. The problem is solved anyways. And then you might just give up. Lastly, what I would say is patience. Have a lot of patience, Don't think you're going to make like $1 billion like in a year or something like that. Take your time, set your goals. Planning is very important, basically. So take your time, be patient. Like whenever something doesn't go wrong, just go back with your team, have a talk, try to address things, come to a common conclusion, and then try again, basically. Because just keep trying, because once it clicks, then it clicks, it takes over. So many people out there want to join you guys because of what you guys have laid, like the foundation. And then from there, it's going to be easy. And yeah, so don't shy away, like anyone that comes, with certain skill sets, don't shy away to include them into the team as well. Because if you see things like from a global standpoint, even countries themselves like appreciate people with talent. So why wouldn't you want to have people that are talented in your company? Don't see it as, I want to do this and take all the glory. Try to create a community, try to push for a community. And hopefully, if anyone, like for me now, if anyone reaches out to me and they're from Africa or anywhere in the world and they want to tackle this problem, I'm more than happy to kind of like have a chat and then, find a role for them within PsychoTec, so that we can help and just kind of push, because more people definitely means like, higher chance of success. So be open. So yeah.
No, that's definitely true. And I think, we already touched on the first point that you mentioned, that, so I won't touch on too much on that. But no, I definitely agree that, this idea of patience and, not necessarily rushing into things or, feeling like, like I think sort of two things. So not rushing into things and, being taking the time to think about things. Like you said, it's not success is not an overnight thing. It's not something, like you said, it's not that you agree to start a business today and then within a week you're essentially now a billionaire. No, that's not how success looks. Sometimes sometimes it can feel like the opposite, is that you're putting a lot of money into your business and it's not necessarily being fruitful at the moment. But it's one of those things, like you said, just like looking to see what is the issue, what isn't, what have you experienced that you think is an issue, and you've checked and you've seen that there's not a solution. One great thing that I will mention, again, I talk about a lot of Brunel resources, but again, just check if your university has them. But Brunel, for example, currently allows any student, whether you're undergrad or postgraduate or research, you're doing a PhD, it allows you to use LinkedIn Learning, sorry. And one of the cool things one of the lessons that, or courses I did on LinkedIn Learning, was all about, validating your startup idea. So, thinking about, you've got this idea, how do I, validate it so that if, I don't know, I meet someone and I talk to them about it and they have some questions, it's not that I'm just like, well, actually, that person's right, I didn't really think about this, or you feel a bit anxious because you don't have all the answers just yet. And one of the key things that he sort of mentioned there was what we were discussing here of, you know, one, like I said before, success isn't something that will come overnight. So you shouldn't be comparing yourself to others and saying that, you know, oh, this person's got a similar business and theirs is already booming and mine isn't. So do you remember to just focus on your journey and, you know, going on the journey that you're on? But he said also, you know, this idea of addressing a problem. He said that whether you're doing a product-based business or a service-based business, you're essentially out there to address the pains of someone else. Well, it could be a pain that you've experienced. It could be a pain that, you know, your friends or your family have told you they've experienced. But it's about addressing pains because he said, essentially, if you want your business to last, you want to be able to show people that, hey, this is the industry, or this is an issue that you have experienced. These are what the people in industry are currently doing, and you can see there's a massive gap in the middle. This is what we're doing to address that gap, and this is how we will essentially make things easier for you. And he was basically saying that when you do that, whether you know you're pitching to potential investors, you're applying for competitions, you're looking for members to join your team. He's basically said that doing those things allows you to basically go out of your way to show, it's clearly showing people the story, why this is, what's the issue, what you're doing to address it, or what could be done to address it, and what you're doing to address it. And then the next thing I just wanted to add was this idea of, like I said, like we said, like having team members, but also having team members, working with, essentially just taking any opportunity to work with people. I do like to say that, on the podcast, yes, we've had some people that we've had some, we might personally know, whether that's through friends or family, or we do the same calls, go to the same university type thing. But we've also had people on here that we have no connection to. We just messaged them on LinkedIn. We've just met them at an event, like this episode today. And it's one of the things that I've always said, that people generally sometimes forget. But if you ask someone, whether this is, you're looking for a mentor and you want to ask someone to be a mentor, or you're looking to learn more about a particular industry, you message someone on LinkedIn, or even, you're looking to, for someone who's started a business or, has gone into an industry you want to work in, and you just want to say, hey, I am happy to work in your company, whether it's paid or unpaid. I just want to get the experience. You are essentially where you are is what I want to be in a few years' time. And I just want to gain this experience from you. And you'd be surprised at how many companies will just be like, oh yeah, that's really cool. You could come stay with us for like a week. You can learn a few things. I know during my placement, so as I'm sure you guys have seen, I'm very passionate with content creation and video editing and stuff like that. So when I was doing my placement, I asked someone who worked in the sort of like media editing team, and it was just random. I just met him, I just met him, like he wasn't in my team. It was just like a random conversation just started, and he was just like, oh, where do you work? Like, what team do you work in? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm here just doing a placement for 3 months. And I was like, where do you work? And he was like, oh yeah, I do like filming. So we film interviews, we edit videos, we create content. And I was like, wow, like, would you mind if I shadowed you for like a day or like 2 days? It wouldn't necessarily have to be the same 2 days, but I'm just really interested in like what you do. And he was just like, yeah, cool. Let me just check with my manager. I can give you stuff to do on the day. I can show you the equipment. I can answer any questions you might have. I can show you some software, and even like all the software that I use now. So like all the stuff I do for video editing, whether it's like event stuff or anything like that. Like I learned a lot of it from just that 1 day, or those 2 days, sorry, of just working with that team. And it's just like what we said here, just if I never asked, I never would have got that. So it's always about taking opportunities. But another thing I'd like to mention that was also discussed in that Imperial B episode is that a lot of small businesses as well. Now, I know everyone loves to get paid, especially with how things are in the world right now. Getting paid is definitely a good thing. But a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, more, I would say, are happy if you just message them, or if, they might put out a job and just say, hey, look, we are, designing a product. We need someone who specializes in marketing. Unfortunately, we won't be able to pay you, but we will try and support you like as much as possible. Or, if you want to work remotely so you don't have to come in, that's perfectly fine. And you'd be surprised how many organizations are just, especially, that's why I say small businesses, I know that for them, finance can be an issue. So they don't always get to pay, whether people are interns or placement students or whatever. But a lot of them will just be like, we're looking for someone. And sometimes it's better to get that experience, get that into that, especially if it's an industry you want to work in, have that foot in the industry, so you can be like, oh, I worked for this company, and some people are like, wow, you worked for this startup, wow, I've heard amazing things about this startup. What was it like, and this and this, and it's really good because it sort of shows to any employers, or if you essentially want to even then become like a consultant who advises startups and stuff, you've then gained all that experience that people will be like, actually, you know what, this person knows what they're talking about. I've seen where they've made an impact on things. So yeah, I definitely agree with that as well, that contacting companies, like I said, ideally, like I know myself, I love to get paid placements, or paid work, because it's always good to get paid while you're doing something you enjoy. But if it's something that you truly enjoy, if it's a career that you want to really learn more about, or an industry you want to get into, just take every opportunity that comes, and you'd be surprised where that opportunity might lead you later on. But yeah, we've now officially come to the end of the episode. I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to discuss all things to do with not only being an entrepreneur, but I guess also how your journey in life can take you in different places. So it's always been a pleasure. Now, as always, I do say that our guest speakers influence and truly impact our audience, and our audience might be thinking, "Wow, this episode was amazing. I wanna get in contact with the guest speaker today because I feel like I have so many questions, or I want to know more about Psychotech, or I want to learn more about starting a business, or how did you find the Brunel Entrepreneur Hub's funding competition? How was it for you? Did you enjoy it? Was there anything you didn't like?" So I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker so he can just let us know what's the best way for people to get in contact with you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And the best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn, actually. So, if you schooled in Brunel, or you're an ex-Brunel student, it makes it even easier anyway. So I would add you instantly, basically. But drop me a message on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn name is the same as my real name, obviously, Akuha Aondoakaa.
Thank you very much, Akuha. And it's like I said, it's been a pleasure to learn more about you and Psychotech, and essentially your entrepreneurial journey. Like I mentioned before, it'd be great to see all the amazing things that Psychotech does in the future. Thank you, our wonderful audience, for your attention and for your time. As always, we truly appreciate it. If you like this video, a like, comment, and subscription is always appreciated. If you have not subscribed to Patreon, make sure that you do, so you can get early access to our content, as well as a few other things. We've got monthly Q&As that we're now doing. You can check out the prices by clicking where it says support the show. If you click there, you can find out more. And essentially, we would just want to wish you all the best. Wherever you are at the moment, I hope you're doing amazing things. And we'll see you in the next episode of Behind the Curtain. So that's bye from us here. Enjoy your day, and we'll speak to you all very soon.